All right, and we're live again for another episode of the Esports Economics Podcast. Super excited to have Adam Fitch, a business journalist over at Dexerto, here with me. Adam, what's going on?
I'm doing well, thank you. I mean, I've been trying to not do anything work related on weekends for quite some time now. But to be honest with you, I've been missing it. So when you said like we could do this on a weekend, I was like, okay, this is great. So actually, my whole day's been kind of building towards this point. So no pressure, but I'm expecting like the best chat I've had in a long time.
Yeah, I was going to say no pressure then, because you normally don't do work stuff on the weekend. Whole day is building towards this. So I will not take this interview lightly. But just want to say, first of all, thank you for coming on the show. Really appreciate you taking the time. It's pretty funny how this came about. You put out a tweet, don't be afraid to shoot your shot. So I was like, hey, you know what? Might as well shoot my shot. Commented down below. And luckily, we were able to make this happen. So super excited to dive into all this.
I appreciate having me, mate. Yeah. And I just think it's an important message. And look, like the fact that you can just do it in public and like, there's actually a bit more pressure on the person to say yes, actually, if you do it publicly as well. But I don't know. I think it's just, it was an important message. And when you said, okay, let me do it. And I was like, okay, well, this is a perfect opportunity for me to prove that it works, you know, but also like getting me on a podcast is not like some big grab, like some huge victory or anything like that. But nonetheless, I'm flattered that you want to speak to me for whatever reason that may be.
Awesome. Well, just as we're getting into it, I know we don't want to spend a whole bunch of time just going through your entire life story, but just real quick for anyone who might not know who you are, just give us a quick rundown of your origin story, kind of how you got into journalism and esports and how you got to where you are now.
Yeah. So I think it was 2016, maybe late 2015. I decided to just start a blog, literally for no actual reason besides the fact that I just wanted to do it. I didn't think I'd ever be a writer. That was not anything I was aiming for in life. I was probably 21 years old, and I was really into movies, television shows, and specifically like the Marvel movies and such for whatever reason, just a big nerd. So I was like, okay, well, I want to write about this stuff. And I had a good friend at the time who was writing about it for himself on his own blog, and we just kind of created our own little site, and it was basically just replicating what we saw on like the big trade publications, so Hollywood Reporter, comicbook.com, Deadline, Variety, everything like that, you know, and that's kind of how I built up just like my understanding of how an article is constructed and the kind of things that'll be covered. And then after about a year of doing it, I could delve into the analytics and kind of see what works and what didn't, you know, and just naturally over time, I was trying to like optimize the content and work out the best times to publish and the ways to format an article, and it was never like breaking any stories or anything because I wasn't connected. And anyway, in like it's weird in the comic book industry, there's not really any scoops there. It's all in like the movie and television side, and I'm certainly not like connected with Universal and Warner Bros and Disney and stuff, right? So I just did that, and I wrote about 1,000 articles in the first year of me ever like really trying to write. I almost treated it as like a part-time job because I just enjoyed it that much. So I would work my full-time job in marketing and then come home and then write. And that basically meant I slept 4 hours a night for the first year, which was very true. And I do not recommend that by any means. But my mate basically, I'll truncate the story a bit. The guy I was doing the website with, writing content with, he got a paid opportunity at CBR, which is Comic Book Resources, the second biggest comic book site. A paid opportunity, and I said, look, if you can get paid, I can, because I'm better than you. So I applied. I applied while I was all like drinking, having a party at mine actually, and they got back to me about an hour later saying, yeah, you can come on board. So that was my first taste of like writing for an actual publication that was making money and such and getting paid for it. And with esports, I'd been following since like 2007, 2008. Big on like the Call of Duty side, because like playing with Optic and stuff like that back in the day. I never got into Optic when it was the sniping days, but I tried. A friend of mine did. So I was aware of it from there. And then it was early 2018. I just Googled esports news and then opened all the publications I found email addresses for them all, cold email, pitched, and Esports Insider got back to me and said, yeah, you can do a trial. So I did a 2-week trial, and for whatever reason, Sam Cook, the managing director, said, yeah, we'll keep you on. And I started as a freelancer there. And from that point, so that was January 2018. In May 2018, I went full-time writing. So it went from 0 to nothing in like 4 or 5 months. It was very quick. And somehow now I've ended up here, and I'm like 3 years down the line. It's all been a bit of a blur.
Love that. Now, in that very quick kind of rise from 0 to going full time, like what were some of the biggest lessons you learned?
Bloody hell, that's a very good question. I never think that you know it all. It is something that's huge, because because I'd been paid, I kind of had a chip on my shoulder at first, like, oh, I know what I'm doing here. Like, I've done it now. I've been paid for it, so I'm successful, and I know what's what. And then it's very humbling entering a new industry and trying to cover an entirely new topic, you know. And also, I was like the weekend editor at Cybersport, which ended up closing, but a lot of good journalists were there, and they covered all of the main esports, right? So there's the CS:GO, there's Dota, there's League of Legends, and there may be a couple of others in there. So I had a very steep learning curve, and there was actually no room of like after the first day for me to even think that I knew it all. So I was very open to everything, and I just delved into everything. Even if I was wrong on something, there'd be an editor there or somebody I can speak to, and they'd help me out. So I'd say that, and also networking. I wouldn't have got many of the opportunities that I did if I didn't put myself out there and speak to people and become friends with them and just reply to their tweets and follow them and like the tweets and stuff, you know, just like making myself known. So when the opportunity did arise where I applied or they had open spots, there was at least a bit of familiarity there. So it wasn't just like a complete cold email. And that was it. I just literally shot my shot. That's a very weird, awkward way of putting it, but I shot my shot. And it worked out. So I know not everybody gets that lucky and don't get all the opportunities they go for. But I actually pretty much did to begin with. And there's probably plenty of reasons for that I'm not even aware of. But yeah, it was just I'd say like networking is a huge thing. Being open to learning is another huge thing. And they're probably the two things that drove me towards where I am now, and actually finding out like the business of esports was the part that interested me instead of like League of Legends or something, you know, because I tried it all and I found what worked for me and I stuck with it.
Got you. And then as you transitioned from the comic book industry to esports, what changed there? Like, are there any like differences that you noticed in like writing styles or how you put together your articles or anything like that?
Yeah, I'd say like my role at CBI was basically just like regurgitating BS and like almost clickbait. It was almost just like, oh my God, did this character just show up in this show? You know what I mean? And then you pad it to 1,000 words or whatever. And because I was getting paid by views and stuff, so you need to make it as vague as possible. And I think maybe page time was a metric, so you needed to like store the answer at the bottom. So that was like very advanced in the clickbait realm of things. But at the beginning with esports, it wasn't as developed. I'd say in that way, it was very like, at least for esports inside, it was very matter of fact. Here's what happened, and that's it. And it was less speculation and more just reporting on what had actually happened, and not saying, "Oh my God, has Faker teased a move to blah blah blah." It was never anything like that. It was just SK Gaming has partnered with Mercedes-Benz or something, you know, and writing about that. So I'd say like comic book. CBR, the comic book website, was very speculative and very sensationalist, whereas esports was very matter of fact. And now you look at like Dexerto, for example. I think they've probably taken the best bits from, or the most effective bits from the comic book industry and similar industries that know how to hook you into an article. But also we do try at Dexerto to give you the facts, of course, and actually be actually deliver on the promise of what the headline what the headline is promising, right? So I'd say it's just two very different approaches, and there's also just no kind of scoops or actual kind of investigative journalism in like the comic book side of things when I was there, at least.
Makes sense. Now, I'm very curious to dive into your just general writing approach for getting these articles done. As someone who does a bit of writing myself, nowhere near the 1,000 articles in the first year that you had mentioned a few minutes ago, but doing articles here and there, about one a week. I'm curious to know, what does that process look like? And let's start from just the brainstorming and researching side of things. Like, how does an idea for a new article come about?
Yeah, that's a very good question. In fact, I actually don't know. I was actually thinking about this the other day. I was like, why? Because I do like a weekly column at Dexerto, right? So I was thinking to myself, like, okay, I need to do one today. What am I going to write about? And I tend to actually just look back at my tweets is the first thing I do, like anything, because my Twitter approach is kind of like, I will just talk about whatever I find interesting at the time, and I'll put it out there, and that's it. And I can always revisit it and explore and update the idea. So I tend to do that. I also use Notion. to store anything that comes to mind as well. So like between Twitter and Notion, like my entire like the landscape of my mind is documented. Though I do find when I'm kind of doing it in a lucid way where I'm just plonking down an idea quickly, it's not fleshed out, and thus when you come back to it, it may not make complete sense to you, right? So I think it depends on the article because if it's an investigative piece, obviously there's no real creativity on my side that needs to be done. If it's a follow-up to a news piece, then like that's informed by whatever the story is. If it's like Astralis partnering with Garmin, then I know I want to ask questions about like the wearables tech industry coming into esports and what they've actually done to accommodate esports instead of just saying it's an esports version of the Garmin, you know? So like that's informed by the story itself. But yeah, when it comes to more like an opinion piece or a feature, I don't have like a surefire way of like explaining how ideas come to me because I don't know how my brain works. I just know that I'll look at a story or I'll see a tweet from somebody else and I'll just kind of it'll just ping into my brain and I'm like, okay, I need to write that down. And sometimes it'll connect with me later on, and sometimes it won't. But I tend to even document what maybe like poor ideas or ill fleshed out ideas because you can maybe come to them later and it'll make more sense. Because like you can only ever connect to the dots when you look in hindsight, right? Like you have to look backwards to connect the dots. Like things don't always make sense until they make sense, and then you can understand everything going backwards. So while I may have like a really nascent, uninformed idea initially, if I've had a conversation with someone a week later, or if I've read some tweets that makes sense, or read an article outside of the industry or something, maybe I can put it in some sort of context that's interesting. And also another good way, this is actually a good bit of advice, I think, is like no idea is really original anymore. So if you want to write an article about something to do with esports, look at what's been done in another industry and how you can apply that kind of topic or that angle to esports. And I'm not saying copy it, but once you get the gist of the article and direction, you'll tend to fill in the blanks for yourself and you know how to apply it to your topic of choice. So I tend to do that quite a bit now. I'm looking outside of the industry a lot more just to learn in general, and then I can bring that kind of thesis or that kind of idea to esports potentially, and that might help me see it in a different way, or it might help confirm what I actually think. And either way, I've got a potential article idea there.
That makes a lot of sense. And interestingly, I was interviewing someone else 2 days ago. He's a YouTube content creator. I don't know if you know him, Salvation's Elite. He's a COD content creator. It's like 40K subs or something. And he actually mentioned that like same exact topic or same exact tactic in terms of YouTube, like looking at what other genres are doing in certain formats, certain topics, and seeing how you can apply that to esports, the Call of Duty scene and whatnot. So love that. Now, what's an example? Do you have an example of a time that you maybe applied that?
Without looking back, nothing comes to mind, but I could look back very quickly right now and so if I go to my columns, I'm sure there is one. In fact, like, so I did like a Mr. Beast article the other day, and that's actually kind of inspired by like Joe Pompliano, who's like he writes a newsletter and tweets a lot about like sports business, and he just tends to break things down and try and demystify where the money is in sports. And I'm slowly trying to expand more into like the creator economy and like
makes sense,
like just YouTube creator influencer side of things, because it's like inextricably linked to esports anyway. And so I'm trying to come to grips with that and understand that. So I was like, okay, how about I try and understand what makes up this industry and the kind of like revenue streams these people have by literally going to take a look. So I pick like the gold standard right now, which is Mr. Beast, probably off of the back of the Mr. Beast burger was why he was in mind, you know, because that's very interesting. And I tried to just break it down. So I went through and wrote notes of everywhere I could see where he could be pulling money in from. And I could have done like a thread like the Pomps do, but instead I was like, well, this makes sense as an article because I get paid to write articles, right? And that's very much like Dexerto's MO. Like that's very much their perfect style of content. So it kind of worked out, and that's the most recent example I can think of. And if you look at my like my columns on Dexerto, my weekly columns, you probably see that a lot of them are not my idea by any means. I've just applied it to the context of esports and somewhat gaming at large.
Got you. Now, once you have that idea in mind, you have a topic you want to write about. What does the writing process look like? What is that process of getting that first draft out on paper, out onto the screen, the Word document look like?
I'd say an article is like 80% finished before I even started writing it at this point for me. So maybe 75%, 80%. I don't know how to like quantify that, but like a good portion of it, right? Like the overwhelming majority. And that's because what I will do is when I have this idea and I think I'm ready to write about it, the first thing I do is like break it down as much as possible. So if it's I don't know, like the future of esports organizations or something like that, I would list what the kind of status quo is for an organization right now, just like bullet points. What the status quo is right now, what we can kind of see, and what I expect to happen in the future. And I'll list all of those things down. And then underneath, I can write a description of why I think this is the case or how I know this is the case at the moment, and flesh it out that way. So when it comes to actually putting together the article, I've actually got my arguments written out for me and the general structure of how I want it to go. So it's just a case of fleshing things out and tying the topics together. And you can almost treat it as like a puzzle or jigsaw, or like switch things around if need be to like fit them into the perfect spot. But I tend to break it down really granularly now. So my arguments are fully made before I even start writing. Though sometimes I do find there is some merit in just going entirely into a flow state and not thinking about it and just having a stream of consciousness and see what hits the page. And when you snap out of it, see if any of it's salvageable or any of it can be polished up. But I would say, admittedly, a lot of it is more pre-planned kind of arguments for and against my point, which I think helps give it a more well-rounded view. And I can poke holes in it before I've actually finished writing it. And thus, I write something a bit more solid and substantial, I think, rather than finishing 1,000 words or 2,000 words and then realizing, oh, I've completely missed something here. You know, so I break it down a lot and then just fill in the gaps and tie it together, basically.
And then when you're doing this, kind of branching off a little bit, do you have a routine in place? Do you have like a ritual or something you do like to kind of get in the zone and write? Or is it kind of just a situation where you just feel it and you get it done? I've seen both approaches, so I'm curious to hear what your approach is to that.
My entire ritual, like when I'm about to write, like I need to pump out this article, I've got an hour left, deadline, whatever. I will go grab my 2.2 liter bottle of water, absolute mainline as much as I can, so I know I'm hydrated because I'm not going to be thinking about water while I'm writing, and I want to make sure I'm good. I go on YouTube or Spotify and I get a playlist, a flow state playlist it's called, which is just like some bullshit sounds in the background, which the thing is they're not melodic, but there's a bit of something to them. So like I don't concentrate on the music. I'm just kind of zoned out from it. I found like music with lyrics, for example, especially if I know the song, that's going to throw me off entirely. So I will absolutely guzzle water down. I will maybe get a little bit of a stretch going first, because I know I'm going to be sat down for a while, and then I get the music on, and I will look at the notes and I'll start fleshing them out, and then from there I can build the article out. That's it. I don't have anything too fancy. I just found that there's a lot of distractions going on, so I don't have anything open that I don't need to have. So Twitter's definitely a no-go. My phone is across the room, because any notification that I get on there will distract me, and I know it will, because I just can't help myself. The moment like you feel the vibration or like you hear the ping, it's like, okay, I need to check what that is. It's just instant. So I have to keep that preferably in another room and have no distraction, basically. And then hope I get into the flow state. Hope I can get into the zone. And if not, then it's very frustrating, and I don't have an answer for what I do from there. I probably just like get really angry at myself and go take a 3-minute walk and come back to it, you know. I certainly don't have it down to a science. I wish I could really hack into like productivity and know the best way for me to be like the best way for me to approach work, and know that if I sit down these next 45 minutes, I'm not going to do anything but write. But I think like inspiration comes in bursts, and motivation does as well. And I try not to rely on that. So I will sit down and do it anyway because of the discipline. But I'll some of the time it just won't come to me, and from there I don't know. Basically, I'm not the perfect worker, but I'm trying.
Well, it sounds like physical health is a pretty big priority in terms of creativity. Like, for example, you had mentioned sleep. I've seen you post a few times on Twitter about the importance of sleep, like linking to a few podcasts. I think the with Matthew Walker. Have you read his book, by the way? It's a really good book.
I'm reading it on the Kindle. Like I was reading it before this, and I'll be reading it after this. I'm thoroughly enjoying it. It's one of the, like he's one of those guys where everything he says and everything he right? It just blows my mind. It's like I turn the page and my mind is blown again, and I've forgotten the last thing that just blew my mind. It's insane. And I thought I knew quite a bit about sleep until I started reading that book, mate. It's insane.
Yeah. What have you noticed? Because I know you had mentioned you were on 4 hours of sleep that first year, really grinding and just getting out content after content after content. Have you noticed a difference in the quality of your content since you've kind of prioritized getting better sleep and kind of taking better care of your body versus just falling into the grind?
Yeah, for sure. I think what actually is interesting is the changes are an improvement in my life outside of work, but it's related to work, right? Because the more I look after myself, like I'm still going to get the work done because that's how I am, and I don't like kind of rate my work based on the past. So I can't be like, well, that was a 6, this is a 10. So I can't say there's like a tangible improvement. But so like last year, I really sorted out my sleep. I really sorted out my health. So I lost like, I think like 70 pounds or something like that. And
no way, that's
made
awesome.
sure I was out thank you very much. Just out every day walking and such. Like if I had a call, I would just go for a walk quickly, something, you know?
Yeah.
And I find that like we stare at screens way too much, I find. And it's not too hopeful, right? And if you go out and if you just switch your mind off for a bit and you come back and actually you're ready to apply yourself, I find it easier. But I've always been kind of a workhorse, so like I can, no matter the conditions, I can sit there and work realistically. But on 4 hours, you're kind of on autopilot. You're all like there's a lot of resistance. You're almost like fighting against the brain fog and the kind of fatigue, and thinking you're being more productive because you're working more hours. But those hours probably aren't your best hours, right? So I had to switch my mindset, like thinking productivity was the amount of hours in instead of the amount of quality work you put in during the hours. So I've probably gone from I don't know how many hours I'd work in a week, say 80 or something like that, to like chop that in half, or maybe even a little bit more of a chop, right? So maybe down to like 35, 40 hours. And but because I'm well rested and I'm not just thinking about the same topics all of the time, because I'm not just doing the same shit day in, day out. There's more variety there. I've got more interesting things again because I truly hated esports. Like halfway through, no, actually, like beginning of last year, I despised esports because I was around it all the time. I'd go on Twitter, I'd see it all the time. For leisure time, I'd just play games. Like I would just eat shit, and I would not go do any sort of exercise. And so I actually feel better overall in life because of these changes, and that I think work's a big part of your life, right? If you work 8 hours a day, that's a third of your life you're working. So overall, I think it's just about achieving a better balance. I think I still do decent work either way. Unfortunately, I wish I was absolutely trash on no sleep because that would mean I'd never, ever go back to that life, you know?
Yeah.
But I can slog it out. And to the quality, I imagine my work's better. And I think also some of that's attributable to the experience I've gained over time and the people I've worked with and my perspective and such, you know? So it's hard to say 100% like sleeping better and looking after myself has made my work better on its own. But overall, like things are so much better for me, and I'd try my best not to go back to the degenerate lifestyle of like 4 hours sleep again now.
What are some of those things that you do besides esports? Because I agree with you. It's very easy to get caught up because we love what we do. So you want to be following it a lot of the time, and it's easy to justify constantly refreshing Twitter, constantly watching YouTube videos on it, writing articles on it, doing videos on it. And it's difficult to kind of shift away. But what are some of those topics or interests that you have outside of esports that have kind of helped you switch your brain off of esports mode for a bit?
Yeah, so I'd say I go through like I do things in extremes. So I do like extreme work and then I'll do like extreme relaxation. So if I'm not working, I'm either doing like something like I'm trying to beat my 5K record in a run or something like that. I'm like trying to run my fastest 5K that I can, or I'm going on like a 5-hour walk or something ridiculous. So I spend a lot of time just trying to get out of my mind and just out there instead and kind of switch off that way. If not, you'll probably find I try to sleep 8-9 hours a day now. So that's a lot of my day gone. Meditation is a big thing for me. Reading is a big thing for me. Listening to the podcasts that I actually want. I think a lot of them are just kind of fluff as some ones that are actually really actionable though. So I try to identify the ones that I'm interested in and not just flock to the people that I like listening to over and over. I'm trying to experience new things all the time and broaden my horizons there. And So I'd say like getting a Kindle has definitely been a really good purchase for me because I'm just buying books willy-nilly now, ones that I would never buy if I would own them physically. And reading is a huge part of my life now. And I wish I could read like 4 hours a day. If I could just do that, like that would be and run and then sleep, that would be absolutely great. But unfortunately, I'm not at that point yet. I need some more passive income for that. But so yeah, I tend to just do. I guess it's a lot of trying to find information and trying to switch off. And the things that tie into those elements are what I flock to, especially after last year. Before it was just gaming. A lot of the time, like 2-3 years ago, from 13 years old up until like 23, it was just a lot of that. But yeah, as I say, like I was around gaming and esports so much, I just started to not like it anymore. So I had to find something new, and then those things interest me like to no end. And the thing is, there's just so much out there. It seems like an infinite amount of books. At this point, it seems like an infinite amount of podcasts and YouTube videos. So I don't think I'll ever run out. So as long as I've got like a thirst for interest, which I hope a thirst for information. Sorry, an interest for information. I'm all over that basically. Just trying to learn and be better. I'm trying to be as smart as you, Tommy.
I don't know about all that, but I appreciate it. I'll take the compliment. Awesome. And I love that. And I think it's super important. I think it's important for a lot of creatives and writers and just content creators in general to hear that, because there's so much out there that would make you think that you need to be grinding all the time. Like if you're not grinding, someone else is like coming after you. And it might be true, but that's not a healthy way to live. So I really appreciate you diving into that. Now, kind of getting back into your writing process. Once you have that first draft out the way, what does the editing process look like? It kind of sounds like editing is part of the first draft process anyway, because you have so much of it done in the pre-work and research and brainstorming. But is there anything else that you do to edit the article, make it flow a little better, polish it up before you hit publish?
Yeah, I'm going to be completely honest with you right here. I tried to avoid like the pitfalls of chasing perfection and thinking, oh, I can keep iterating this draft and eventually it'll become the perfect article that I'm really happy to publish. So because of my like detailed approach to most articles, by the time I fleshed it out, I know I've already hit the main points. And I'm lucky to have like a bunch of editors at Dexerto. So what happens is when I'm happy that I've written the draft as such, I'll just hand it straight over at this point. Like, and that's it's definitely not the best practice, and I definitely wouldn't recommend it to new writers. But the editors are more removed from the article than I. If I've been really immersed in it, then it's hard for me to see outside of it. So an outside perspective can really help strengthen the piece. So if they're going through it and say, yeah, well, you haven't mentioned this bit, or this paragraph makes no sense, you could reword it this way, whatever. Like that's more helpful than me trying to do it, because I'm only going to find like minor tweaks at this point. So I wouldn't advise a lot of people to do it, but just where I am, I found this works for me is I get the first draft done, and that is also basically my final version.
I'm just disconnected for some reason. Give me one sec. Wouldn't be a podcast recording without tech issues, wouldn't it?
Of course, mate. Of course, it has to happen.
All right, let me just triple check. All right, go ahead and say something. I think we should be good.
Okay, I'm speaking as you say, and yeah, I definitely don't.
We're all.
Okay, yeah, I don't recommend people doing it, but I just think like for me, because I've written so many articles at this point, I kind of know my style, I know my voice and such, so I never have to worry about that anymore. And I just try to avoid like perfectionism, because you'll never actually reach it anyway. You'll just keep iterating and get lost, and then actually grow tired of the subject that you're writing about because you've been around it too much. So I just chuck it out there. Same with like videos and stuff. I do the exact same thing. I think of an idea, I speak about it, I put it out. Or I get someone on in the podcast, I record it in Zoom. I don't try to be perfect about it, and then it gets straight uploaded. I don't edit anything out. So things may not be perfect, but I'm a lot more productive that way. And plus, if there is a really bad article that comes out, then I can revisit it at that point. But I've been doing that for about a year now, and no one's come and said, Adam, mate, the stuff you're producing is absolutely dire, So I think it's working for me. But I do recommend people go over it a couple of times, and especially get an outside POV if possible. So if you haven't got an editor, if you're not working at a publication, then maybe like a family member or something, because what you want is your writing to be able to be understood by basically anyone. That the people who aren't good writers basically write as if they're putting together an essay. The good writers are the ones who break it down simply, where anyone can kind of understand what you're getting at, in my opinion, at least. That's what I think a good writer does. Well, obviously it depends, but like in the sphere we're in, definitely you don't need to be writing an essay by any means or trying to be the next Shakespeare or something like that. So an outside POV where like your mom or your auntie or dad, whoever, could be like, well, I don't understand this bit. Okay, maybe you could explain that a bit better. Just put a little qualifying word in front of it. So if you say like a team, blah, 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 and then go into the name, instead of just saying Space Station Gaming, you could say like professional gaming team or something like that. And that provides a little bit more context and avoids any semblance of confusion that can come out of it. So outside POVs are probably the biggest thing for me, especially like advising newer writers.
Makes sense. Now, like you said, it's important to make sure like your audience can understand it and you're not trying to be too complex. I think every writer has gone through at least somewhat of a phase there where you're writing to impress other writers rather than to actually get the point across to your reader. I'm curious though, who would you say is Dexerto's primary audience? So like, is it the hardcore esports fan, or is it like the casual esports fan? Or is it even people outside of esports trying to bring them into the esports ecosystem?
Yeah. So while I don't have access to analytics, I will say like the primary audience is the gaming fan, the everyday gaming fan and internet, like young internet user. Like esports is definitely a part of what they do, but I don't think I'm spoiling anything by saying it's not the primary driver of traffic or revenue. It's just like it's important for us to do it, I think, because that's where Dexerto started and that's the industry we're in. But as a reason, if you go on the website at any given time, you'll probably see in the featured panel where there are 6 articles, you probably see like 2 or 3 esports and 2 or 3 general gaming or like internet culture pieces. So as much as we'll cover like the Blast Premier Global Finals, you'll also see like TikTok stars like doing weird shit, and that's not necessarily stuff I'm into, so I don't pay attention too much. But it's so much wider than just esports, and that's where a lot of publications are going wrong, in my opinion. They're just trying to focus on the competitive side of things, and the readership just isn't there right now. So they rightfully basically cover everything, but I imagine and I think it's the young internet user is the primary audience, which is obviously a very big potential audience if you can tap into that.
Definitely. Now, once you have the article written, first draft's done, editing's done, you got the green light from the editor. At what point during this process do you come up with the headline? Do you do it after you're all done, before you start? Depends on the article. What's your approach there? And how do you kind of iterate the headline to, again, like you mentioned earlier, strike that balance between not too clickbaity, but also intriguing enough to actually get the click? Because I mean, you and I can both acknowledge that is important when you're doing this stuff.
For sure, yeah. A lot of people think Dexerto is clickbait, but actually they're just writing headlines well because they're drawing you in, but there's no misinformation there. They're not like, that's the thing, is they've got a really bad reputation for just doing things well. And it obviously works because a lot of people read the stuff, right? But in terms of headlines, if it's like a column piece, then basically my column's built normally around a singular idea. So it could be like esports fans don't exist, or again, like the future of esports isn't competition. And then it's up to me to kind of chop that down and work out what I'm getting at from there. So for the columns, my headlines tend to stay the same because it's just like a short, snappy, somewhat controversial or striking statement. And that's what I built my idea around anyway, because my column is basically supposed to just be like a hot take from me, explained well, right? So from there, it doesn't change much. But on like a general article basis, whether I'm like interviewing a bunch of people, or I was exploring why like esports organizations are rebranding a lot recently, for example, I have the general gist of where I want to go with it. But I find So I find like having the general headline helps to keep me focused and help like guide me and make sure I'm on the right tracks and covering the main topic. But I will tinker with it afterwards. And Dexerto's actually got a really good process where we kind of like crowdsource the ideas for headlines. So there's like 70 of us in this Slack who all write as a big team. And you pop it in a chat and say, what do you think of this idea? I was thinking this because the article's about this, blah, 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 blah. And they'll kind of help iterate on that. So again, it's about making sure that you're explaining the contents well, but not giving away the answer, I think. So it's like almost like sparking some intrigue and leaving the actual answer out of it, so they have to go and read what it is. So there is an art to it. I myself haven't figured it out yet. Like I was a very boring article headline writer at ESI, so like which is where I was for like the first 2.5 years or something, right? So I'm still trying to work out what the perfect headline is. But again, like the outside voices help a lot. But it's just striking the balance, as I say, between like intrigue and information, I think. And I honestly can't take credit for my headlines, and my headlines may be trash, but I like to think like at this point I've built enough kind of reputation around myself, at least for the people that follow me for a while, to know that no matter the headline, like they want to read it, as long as like the main concept is somewhat of interest to them, I hope. So maybe I don't rely on it as much as I could have, or maybe should have. Maybe I should really work on that and take like a course on headline writing, or ask like all my bosses at Dexerto to really break it down for me, because it's going to be like a perfect length and everything like that. I think like we aim for like 73 characters at most, something like that. That's probably for like Google search results and like displaying it on Twitter and such. But yeah, I wish I had the answer, mate. I wish I knew exactly how to do it, because I'd probably be out on my own, just like independent, raking in hundreds of thousands a year just off of like the best headlines, you know.
There you go. It's funny you mentioned the esports fans don't exist headline, because when I was doing some research for the podcast and I was looking through like some of the articles you've written, and that was one that popped. I actually read the article, and the headline was what drew me in. So yeah, if that means anything, that headline was really good in my opinion, because it definitely got my attention.
That's the thing though. It's like it's creating intrigue, because it's like, well, this is bullshit. Obviously, there are esports fans, but okay, so why is he saying this? I need to find out, because like if you feel strongly enough about it, you're gonna want to read it, right? And that was just genuinely that there was not a headline I did after the fact. That was like, I was thinking about how fragmented the scene is, and I see a lot of people always say like, I'm an esports fan or fan of esports, or like blah 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 blah. Like, and it's never really sat too well with me, because I'm just like, okay, so you follow every esport, like you're a fan of like all like 30, 40, 50 titles we've got? Probably not. So yeah, it was actually, that was just the main premise I had in my head, and I just kind of stuck with it. The colleagues of mine at Dexerto were fine with it. I guess because it's short and snappy, and I drew you in, so I'm sure it drew other people in as well, you know.
Awesome. Now, what does the process look like when you're co-authoring an article? Like I've seen a few articles that you've written that have like there's two authors on like credited on the article. What does that process look like?
Oh, really? I don't think I've ever done one. Are you looking on Muckrack?
Really? Yeah, I was looking there, and there were like a few where two names were listed. So I don't know if you co-authored one, or you could, or
no. Muckrack is a little bit messed up, and I think that's probably sometimes bringing in like the person who had edited the article as well. So if their user profile has been seen in it, it might be associated that way. So I actually haven't done it. It's something I'm interested in doing, in fact, because I've never done it, and I want to learn. And there was at one point I thought somebody was coming to join Dexerto who didn't end up coming to join Dexerto, but I was very interested in the concept of like working with them on a few articles, which obviously never came into fruition because they went elsewhere. Their loss, by the way, because, well, just their loss. I'm not going to be too detrimental. I'll give anything away there. But there was a person I was really interested in working with who I will not have the opportunity to do so now, and I wanted to co-author with them, but I've never really done so. But I'd say a lot of my pieces are collaborative in the sense that I'm having to work with other people to get it over the finish line, whether that's getting comments from people or just it's based on a chat that I've had with someone else, and we've kind of helped flesh out each other's ideas or disprove or prove some points. But in terms of actually putting the article together itself, I haven't actually done it, mate. I'm a bit of a noob in that sense, so I can't offer any advice there.
Okay, got you. Yeah, no, because I was looking on Muckrack and I saw the names listed, so I was like, oh, that's interesting. I wonder
It's a bit annoying.
But once you have the article done, it's published. Do you have any input on the way the article is promoted? Do you have any insight onto what that approach looks like? How you guys promote on Twitter, on other platforms? Like, what does that process look like?
Yeah, this is like the least sexy answer of all time. But we have a channel in the Slack called Tweet Checker where we say, do we want to tweet this out? Because we've got like so it's like they call it like the Dexerto network, where it's like 12 different, maybe 15 different channels. So there's some for FIFA, Fortnite, Apex, Valorant, blah 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 blah, and then there's the main Dexerto one as well. Now, because my content is business content, it typically would go on the Dexerto one, and that's it. It's not going to go like on a FIFA Twitter, for example. So you go in and say, do we want to tweet this? And there's the senior editors and such there who know exactly how they want to go about things, and they will say yes, and if so, you suggest some copy, and then that's it. And again, it's the same kind of thing with like the headline. It's about trying to entice them in, giving them enough of a hook to where they want to kind of get an answer or see why they're thinking of their opinion on something is being challenged in the sense of my content, at least. Or if it's like I don't know, Scump is potentially retiring, blah blah blah. Like you don't want to say, oh, if he mentions like retiring next season, you wouldn't in the tweet say Scump is retiring this season. He said so on this podcast, blah 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 blah, and spill all the beans in the tweet. You'd say like, Scump has revealed when he will finish competing, and then you're gonna want to click and see when that is, right? So it's just about like giving enough information, but also creating some sort of intrigue. And for me, like when I was at Esports Insider, I was the editor, which also meant, because we were quite understaffed, to be honest with you, that I was also like the social media manager. So that was a really bad way of doing it. I'd take the headline, and that would be the first part of the tweet, and then I'd take a quote or a bit of secondary information, and that would be a separate paragraph, and then there'd be a link underneath it. And I don't think that was the best way of doing it whatsoever. But I wasn't a hired social media manager in that sense. So it was just a case of I had to just get it out quickly and move on to the next thing. So that was that. And now I'm pretty lazy / fortunate where I've got a little bit of a following, and the people who want to read my stuff just follow me. So I'll just tweet it out myself. I'll be like, do esports fans actually exist? I don't think so. And that's it. Like it's again, it's just like very much like part of my brand, I guess, is just being pretty blunt. So I can get away with just being blunt in a tweet now, I think, instead of going, okay, guys, just publish a new article. Everyone go read it. That doesn't actually help at all, I don't think. It's just like, no, esports fans don't exist. Don't believe me? Like, read this. You'll find out why I say that, and you will not be able to argue with it. Something like that would be so much more convincing for someone to read. And then I'll sometimes pop it on LinkedIn as well, but that's just because it's business content. I don't think all content really suits that too well, to be honest with you. Like, I wouldn't put a FIFA like team of the week article on LinkedIn, so that's very subjective. But I'd say most publications do it their own way, and so even personally, people share things their own way. I don't think there is a right or wrong way. It's maybe just worth checking the analytics of how things go, right? But also you've got to consider that some articles are naturally going to be more appealing than others, and same with the tweets. So you can kind of you can look around and steal some formats and like tinker with them a bit from other people you see, and see what works for you, really.
Have you had success on LinkedIn with content, or is it more just like you write an article and you just kind of copy paste it, or what? Do you have a specific approach there?
My approach before was creating like quite a detailed post, and then just embedding it at the bottom. So I'd probably copy the first 2 or 3 paragraphs, because I know I'm like building the argument there, and then just like tailor it a little bit so it's maybe less specific and more open-ended. But now, and I don't know why this is, but I was just like, I really can't be asked just trying to sell myself on LinkedIn, but it is another channel. So now I'll just do the same kind of tactic as I do on Twitter. I just keep it very natural, and if the headline and image and stuff are done correctly, I guess people are going to see it on their feed and want to click. So before, it used to be some sprawling, like, this is really why you should read this. And now it's just like, this opinion is a matter of fact. That is it. Like, this is it. Like, I've written this. And then it's been going super well, actually. I don't know what it is. Like the past 2 or 3 months on LinkedIn, everything I put out is just like building It's building upon the last one and getting more shares, more likes, more comments. I get a lot of angry DMs as well, which is always nice. From like the LinkedIn grifters who think they know esports but don't actually know anything about it, and because I do challenge them quite a bit. So again, like my strategy there has just changed. I don't recommend it for everyone, but like now I'm just like, because I've built myself up to I've got a little bit of authority in the industry, a tiny bit. Like my voice means a little bit of something. So I'm just leaning into that and maybe treating myself as like more importantly than I actually am. And because like the way you treat yourself and the way you present yourself to the world is somewhat how it'll reflect back on you. So if I treat myself like a really big deal and like I never take time for anyone, no one can ever get in touch with me, like I only ever put my stuff out there and that's it, people will treat me that way. And so likewise, if you seem like a really giving person, a really friendly person, more people are likely to reach out and try and have a conversation and want to engage with you, right? So it's just about how you frame yourself, and that is something I'm trying to work out, exactly how I present myself online. But for now, it's just like, yeah, this is my opinion, but it's pretty much a fact at this point in my eyes. So like, what are you going to do about it? If you disagree, let's have it. Let's have a chat, and I'll leave it there. It's almost a bit cocky, to be fair, but it's all part of the character, I guess.
You kind of read my mind with the next question I was going to ask, but I was going to ask, do you, with that approach that you take, being a bit more blunt, being a bit more straightforward, and kind of stating the articles as a matter of fact versus, hey, just wrote an article, like, let me know what you think. Thanks very much. How do you deal with that negative feedback, like the angry DMs, commentary from it? Like, do you just kind of ignore it? Like, what was your approach there?
I've always been ridiculously thick-skinned in life. And I've always been very blunt. And the way I operate is it's just like, I am honest at all times. So like, whether I'm right or wrong in my opinion or whatever, it is just how it is. And I know that, especially online, like the opinions of other people genuinely just don't matter, especially if it's someone I don't respect, who's not in the industry, whatever it may be. So if it's just some random guy who just responds, they've got an egg profile picture and they say, this is shit, you should kill yourself.
It's just either like, the egg or the anime profile picture.
Yeah, or the anime. If they've got an anime profile picture and Overwatch in their bio, like it's an instant block because they're just deranged instantly. It's just like, you've got nothing. There's nothing you can provide me that is of value to me. So why do I need to see your shit? So for me, it's just like, the best thing to do online is just block people out. If they're never going to add anything, if the only time they've ever interacted with you is to say that you should like jump off a bridge or something, it's like, okay, well, I don't need to see this. I can just block you and I will never ever think of you ever again. Like it's not a factor to me. So because I'm thick-skinned in person, that helps. But I take it, like I think about like the fact that anonymity is a thing on the internet, and that basically allows people to be really brave when they actually wouldn't be like that normally. If everyone had to attach their actual picture and their name to their profiles, they would operate very differently. So if people don't present themselves that way, I automatically discount their opinion one way or the other. If they think I'm great or if they don't think I'm very good at all, it just means nothing to me. It's just like, it's almost like a video game. I don't even see them as like real people. Like Twitter, I don't take super seriously anymore. I used to, and I used to get into an argument with absolutely everybody to prove my point was right. That's how I was like the first year, like real chip on my shoulder. Like I had to prove to people that I knew what I was on about because I actually didn't really know what I was on about. That's how you knew that was the case. It was almost like an insecurity thing. Like, oh, you think you can pick holes in this article? Let's go at it. But with 140 and then 280 characters, you really can't get too much across. And I realized like it's a complete waste of time. I could block them, and then in 3 minutes that tweet is not going to be in my mind, and I will never think about that account ever again because I didn't know them anyway. And if it's someone who I know who's providing negative feedback, like or saying my article shit, or I don't know what I'm on about, like, and I respect them, okay, let's have a chat, let's have a private chat, and you can inform me. And if I am wrong, then I've advanced my thinking, and thank you very much. It's like, if it comes from a place of respect, it's very different from like a place of like internet trolling. It just doesn't mean much to me. They're just like non-playable characters in my mind, all these like anime profile picture, egg profile picture people, to be honest with you, mate.
Makes sense. Well, awesome, man. I think we pretty much nailed everything there is to nail in terms of your approach to writing. So I kind of want to shift gears a little bit to as we get to the tail end of the show. And I'm gonna ask a very open-ended question. It can go many different ways, but what are your thoughts on the current state of esports journalism or gaming journalism in general?
Yeah, I like very explicitly and openly avoid games journalism in the Kotakus and all of those shithouses, IGNs and stuff. Like they've all got agendas now. It's all very, very like it's like political journalism or political activism or something like framed as games journalism. So like you'll read a review about like Cyberpunk or something, and then like 4 paragraphs in, they'll tell you why like Trump needs beheading, and it's just like I'm here for the games. I don't care about that shit. You know what I mean? Or like this is why capitalism is bad, socialism good, and it's just like I'm not here for that. So I actively I don't mix with those people very well in person. They're not my kind of people because they're very like 2-dimensional or 1-dimensional. Realistically, they only care about that shit. I like people who have a bit of nuance to them and who I find interesting. So I avoid games journalism like the plague, mate. Obviously, there's a bit of that on Dexerto, but I just don't read it, so I can't comment on that stuff. But unlike esports journalism, it's interesting. I've kind of vocally had a gripe with how like the competitive side of it is covered, because if you look at like League of Legends, which is the biggest esport in the world, in the West at least, I can't speak to the Eastern journalism side, which we tend to ignore quite a lot actually in our sphere on Twitter and stuff. Like we never really acknowledge that the East has their own stuff going on, especially on like the award shows and such. But yeah, I'd say you see like 6 of the same interview or something like that. Like after a match, if it's like Vitality versus Misfits or whatever, and Misfits win, and you've got one of their players interviewing, and they're doing like 3 or 4 interviews. It's just the same shit every time, and it's probably the same in sport, but it's just boring. I don't think there's too much value in it. Like there's nothing that differentiates your content from the next person's. So I don't rate that at all. And actually, I did like I had a conversation and recorded a conversation with Yinsu Collins, who's now like a broadcast host for Valorant, like First Strike, but she's journalist from like Sky Sports and Red Bull, Dexerto, Dot, all of those. Like she knows what she's on about, a journalism major as well. She was saying she actually thinks it's quite oversaturated, like esports journalism, especially when it comes to like the press side for games and such, like League of Legends. It's just as like too many members of press, because the barrier to entry is so low. So like if you've got a blog, you call yourself press, and then you'll probably get access to like the press room at like LEC or something like that, especially when it's online at the moment. So it's actually hard for like the legacy media, the ones that are proven to create good content, to actually get the focus they need to put out a good article, and thus they can't produce anything too great. And I think that's an interesting line of thought to go down. I haven't thought about it enough yet to fully present my own version of it.
Yeah.
But so she thinks it's oversaturated on like the reporting on the game, like the actual competitive match side of things. On the business side is absolutely dire right now. There are people at Esports Observer and there are people at Esports Insider. I respect a lot of them, but outside of the news reporting side of things, it is not great. It is probably, oh Jesus, do I want to sound egotistical? Like I'm like leading away there so bad right now. It's insane in my opinion. Like Jacob Wolf obviously does good stuff on the investigative side. That slowed down a lot last year because ESPN wanted him to do 50,000 different things and try and cover CSGO and everything else as well. So he's kind of out of that a little bit, but it'd be interesting to see what he does now. He's at Dot and like thoroughly investigating things. Kevin Hitt's broken some stories at Observer on the business side. I think he's done them in bad faith a lot of time, actually, and they break a lot of embargoes over at the Esports Observer, which is pathetic. And so if you ever see me retweet a tweet, which is just the definition of embargo, that's because they've broken a story early and in an attempt to get more views than other people, and they never get penalized for it, by the way. And that's something that no one ever talks about, but it happens like once a month. Where everyone's agreed to, you like 2 p.m. we'll post about this story. So we're all on time. Like everyone's abided by it. And at 1 p.m. they'll just bang it out and then go, oh, we didn't know. Sorry, we got it wrong. Because only I will ever discuss it. And only I will DM them and say, what the fuck are you doing, man? You know?
Yeah.
So I think that's pretty poor. I think there's a lot of substance and no style actually in esports journalism and writing right now. There's not too many people doing anything with any real flavor. It's all just like, I spoke to X of X team and he told me that they want to win this split, or is Call of Duty League going to be a success? It's just the same shit over and over. I myself am trying to like start some conversations and bring a bit of nuance to things and open some topics up that aren't really discussed too much. And I'm not going to be able to do that shit by myself. So I'm hoping other people step up. I'd love to see like Richard writing a weekly column, and I know DK does like his mailbag stuff. So he's not just the reporting side, but also like his own opinions. He does some op-eds, but I don't think it's too great. So I think it's actually pretty boring. Like, and there's a reason these publications are failing, and that's because they're only focusing on one side of the industry. And there's a reason that there's publications like Dot and specifically Dexerto who are absolutely smashing it. So, like, for example, Dexerto had 25 million unique readers in December alone. 25 million. And when I was at Esports Insider, we were getting like 200,000 website hits a month. So, like, think about like the ceiling on business content right now versus like covering the entire scope of the industry and treating it more as like a part of internet culture as a whole, because that's what gaming is. Gaming is like pop culture now. Like it's a big part of the internet. So I think as a reason publications come and go. I think what's going to happen is in the next week or two, we're going to see another major publication be announced with significant backing, overpaying staff like mad. I know this is fact. Overpaying staff like mad. Likely covering esports mainly, over doing like a Dexerto approach and going like internet culture first and then having an esports section. They've got big names, but they're paying them an amount that cannot be recouped very quickly, and the burn rate for money for this publication is going to be mental, and it's going to just repeat the cycle that we see where they come in, they try and write about esports. It's not entertaining, it's not personality driven. It's not framed properly. Like, no one wants to read 3,000 words on why an Asian League of Legends player is going to win next year. Like, some op-eds I read on ESPN, for example, were just fucking shit. Like, who cares about esports fashion written by someone who isn't fashionable? I'm sorry, but it's no one's going to read that shit. Like, we're gamers. Like, most of us are not fashionable. So no, I'm not going to read your shit. And I don't care. Like, and they always start with like, it was a rainy Thursday night and I was in a cafe sat with X player, and it's like, no, this doesn't work. We don't care about that. Like, 13-year-olds don't care about that shit. They want the juice. They want the spicy shit. So I think as a reason, Dexerto is absolutely thriving right now, whether people like it or not. Like, people want to read it, right? It's the vocal minority that dislike it. And there's a reason they're capturing so many eyeballs. Esports Insider, Observer, Dot, all of them can learn from it. And Dexerto can learn more as well and lean into it more. But again, there's a reason they come and go every like 6 to 9 months as a publication that disappears. It's because they're too insular. They think esports is just competition at this point, and thus do not even have access to the eyeballs needed to be sustainable. And thus, like, the revenue models is just like, oh, we need ads and we've got some sponsored content and that's it. It's like, that's not really sustainable either. No one's tried a subscription model yet. I don't know if that'll work in every case. I think that's pretty dependent on having a massive readership anyway. And having some kind of mainstream notoriety probably helps. So I don't think that will necessarily work in esports. So I think there are some good aspects to it. Like, I think we're doing all right, but I definitely think there's a long, long way for us to go. There are about 50,000 different little notes I have on how we can improve things. But also myself, I don't know too much. I'm relatively inexperienced. Like, the getting paid to write and stuff, I've been doing it like 4 or 5 years now. I certainly don't think I have media worked out, but I know it's going more personality driven. If you look like Morning Brew and what they're doing there, they're a really interesting case study. They just got purchased, majority owned, but they're just doubling down on what they're doing. They got purchased by a traditional publication, but they're allowing them to do their own style of work, right? And that's a really interesting case for how this will go in the future and like the future of media. I think it's going to be a lot more. I think like the person is the new publication. I think like the personality is the new news source. So if you look like Jake Lucky, for example, wherever he goes now, he's going to have eyeballs. In my video with him, he thinks like if he left Esports Talk, he would have nothing left. He'd have to start afresh, and he couldn't be more wrong. People are there for him. So like the personalities like him, Richard, Thorin, Slasher, like them or love them, like they command an audience, and they're always going to be super valuable, especially in media. Sorry, that was a massive vomit. That's what happens when I get a really open-ended question. I have to brain fight it all out.
Now, what are your thoughts on the ESPN situation? That happened a while ago when I think they cut their esports division or something like that. I could be wrong there, but something happened over there. What are your thoughts on that? And do you think that it makes sense for traditional sports outlets to bother with esports, or do you think it should be something that if you're going to go into esports, like it should be a endemic sort of gaming publication like Dexerto, like the esports insiders of the world and stuff like that?
Yeah, I think there's definitely room. I think like once the readership grows for the competitive side, whoever wants to be somewhat responsible for that, then good luck to you. But then it would fit in on a sports website, right? I think just having that element could work, but it relies on esports' adoption into like mainstream sports, traditional sports more first, or else it'll always forever be a gimmick. But also, I don't think sports writers are going to be able to cover esports the way that esports writers do. The people who are actually in the scene, like I wouldn't try and go report on football an hour and join the Athletic. Like it's just not, it's not going to work, you know. So I think it's reliant on that. Like you can see, like the BBC are trying to do bits and bobs right now as well with documentaries and actually broadcasting the matches, and I've had like a live news ticker and all this kind of stuff before with live blog updates. But with ESPN, it was a case of I don't think they knew the esports audience too well, or like the larger gaming audience. So as I say, like if you look at what they covered initially, it was like, oh, we're going to invest in like long form investigative pieces, and they had 3 long form writers there. Well, 2 long form writers and Jacob, who's obviously a breaking news reporter, who also can do the longer investigative side of stuff outside of breaking news. And then things change because what inevitably happens is the publication or the corporate entity above it realizes there's not enough eyeballs there. So then they have to move to the next phase of the plan, which is, okay, let's try to get as many eyeballs as possible, which means covering games. And therefore, you're covering the shit everyone else is already covering. Like you're not really doing anything new there. So you can see them like they were doing like Tony Hawk content and stuff on ESPN esports. And it's like, what the fuck is this? You're framing it as esports and it's not esports. So that's actually jarring for an audience anyway. And then it's content anyone else can do unless it's an interview. And then like people are following you because you're Jacob Wolf and you're an esports reporter, not because you think Valorant is going to be more successful casually than CSGO or something. Obviously, that's just a random example, one I made up, unless you did write that and then I'm a prophet or something. But, you know, I think they didn't know the audience and then they were forced to pivot and they were stretched too thin. And you've got these people who are experts or so-called experts in their areas, and then force them to look outside of it and do other things. And that's a waste of personnel and thus a waste of money. And it didn't stick. Like the video content they were forced to do didn't land because besides Arda, they're not video personalities at all. They're pretty stiff, they're awkward. The gamers, look, like the gamers, like, I'm sorry, Emily Rand's on the LCS broadcast now, but like, look at the video. She's just not, she's no Arda. She doesn't have the charisma and stuff as like Arda does, right? Like he's born for that shit. He's 20 years into broadcasting. So you look at their video content and like it wasn't like the thumbnails weren't good. It wasn't framed very well. Like the content, like when you actually click into it, it wasn't great because they're writers, not necessarily like on camera talent. So I think it was just like a storm of shit there, to be honest with you. They had like some, like mainly good writers. I think Jacob Wolf's really great. I think Fionn and Emily were massively overrated because they got like some ESPN buff. Personally, I believe that. And they got stretched too thin because the results weren't there. And then they weren't happy. And then inevitably ESPN didn't actually see an upside to it because they were too late and they were understaffed and overworked. And it was inevitable they were going to pull out at some point. I think we all knew it. The writing was on the wall. Like Jacob told me a long time before ESPN announced it was closing that he was going to leave at the top of this year anyway. So I knew that was coming, and I thought that signaled the end, to be honest with you. And they are still going to cover esports, they say, but they're not going to have like dedicated staff towards it. And I just think it's going to be a waste of time. I don't think like I don't care about what a basketball reporter thinks of like the NBA 2K League, really. And no one cares about the NBA 2K League outside of like 3,000 people who will actually read about it, maybe. So good luck to them. But I don't think like a traditional sports website will ever lead the way in esports coverage. I think it'll be more they can they can kind of service esports the way they service sports right now. So if you think of like live match updates and like score updates and such, I think that may work in the future when esport, like in 30, 40 years, if when esports is like common among the public. But until then, just stay out of it, boomers, and let us work our magic.
Makes sense. And second to last question before we wrap up the interview, with all the work you've done in researching and writing articles in the genre of business and esports, what do you think is a trend or something that's going to develop within esports in the next 1 to 3 years that's going to be big?
We say this every year, and I do believe it. I think like media rights is probably the biggest revenue stream that we don't have just yet, really. ESL are doing pretty well. Blast did pretty well last year as well at acquiring some broadcast partners. LEC are doing a pretty good job as well. Probably larger. LoL Esports is doing pretty well, to be fair. But we don't know the money behind them because it's all smoke and mirrors, of course. So I think every year we say this is going to be the thing that really drives new revenue in. But tournament organizers are really dependent on like people buying shit at stands at events and the tickets at events and sponsorship. Like if we could have like the broadcast revenue as well, that would help them to diversify and thus not have to sell themselves out as much or like not price stuff ridiculously. And as esports grows more popular publicly, then like the TV stations want to get in more. I don't know if like the esports audience will ever switch to television, but it'll be a good discovery tool for esports. So like esports on the BBC, there's no reason for me to watch it on the BBC over Twitch or YouTube, but the people who BBC watchers already who have the paid TV license in the UK and are just looking for something to watch, they may stumble upon it. And if there's no sports going on, but they can see CSGO, for example, or Rocket League, and they're a football fan and they see Rocket League, they'll be like, okay, I can kind of get into this. And then they see the excitement of a match if it goes down to like 3-3 and it's like the next goal wins and the casters are going crazy and there's a goal where it's absolutely insane. Maybe then that can sell them and it serves as a discovery tool and we funnel them into esports that way. I think that is something I'm hopeful for. I think we'll see some of that. But yeah, it will be more like 3 years instead of the 1 year as to when like media rights deals are really substantial. But like I'm sure you saw like the headline about the Billy acquiring like the Chinese broadcast rights to the League of Legends World Championship for 3 years. So this is just one event, once a year, an event for 3 years, and I think it was like 113 mil or something like that, or maybe like 89 mil. I can't remember right now, but like it was absolutely insane figure. And that's one of the only kind of public figures we've got, and it's been basically confirmed to be behind the scenes by people at Riot that was a very accurate number. So I think it was like $113 million, I think, which is absolutely bloody insane, right? So crazy. That shows a little insight into what is available to tournament organizers and broadcasters as esports becomes more accepted and known in the public sphere, I guess. So that's something I'm really interested in, and there's something I covered a lot last year at Esports Insider before moving over to Dexerto.
Awesome. And the last question I have for you today is a super important one, so no pressure. But do you drink coffee? And if so, how do you drink your coffee?
I do drink coffee, and I went vegan last year, right? Okay. So it used to be a very milky coffee with 2 sugars. Yeah. And then I went to like almond milk, and then I was like, it's nice. But now I'm going to get judged heavily for this, but I will not drink coffee after 12 p.m., which I think is important because you need to get the coffee in your system so you can sleep well. I will not drink caffeine after 12 p.m. Unless it's a treat. Like today, like I'm drinking this, which is caffeine, but like I will not drink a coffee after that. And it's straight black, nothing else in it. It's just coffee beans and it's some hot water. And that is it. It took me maybe like 3 weeks for me to actually like it, to be completely honest with you. I know a lot of people really love like black coffee, and I didn't understand it, but I was like, if I do it enough, I'll just get used to it. So I'm a black coffee guy now. I'll have 1 or 2 in the morning when I'm working, and that's it, mate. What about yourself? Because I hope you're a black coffee drinker as well.
I am. I'm a cold brew drinker, so I drink it black too. So I don't drink. I don't have milk in it. I mean, I don't by default lactose intolerant, so that's out of the picture anyway. But okay, cold brew. Not really sure how I got into it, but I just got into it and haven't turned back. I would say a close second is just straight black hot coffee. That's always good. The only answer that I really just test is iced coffee. It's like cold brew and iced coffee are very different. Like iced coffee is watered down, cold brew isn't. So that's my thoughts on that. I haven't had anyone say
this is where I annoy you a bit, because when the pandemic is over, the first thing I am doing is going to a Starbucks or a Costa and getting an iced latte. I'll be honest with you, mate. I miss them. I miss it a lot. Iced drinks for me, it's either that or it's going to be black coffee. But I've just kind of forgot iced drinks exist because of the circumstances. I can't go and buy one, you know. So you're not a fan of the iced drinks?
No, I am. I drink cold brew every day. I drink it iced, just specifically iced coffee. Like the watered down stuff. I mean, like the iced latte, totally fine. Just the plain iced coffee, just not the way to go.
I appreciate it, mate. You obviously know more about coffee than me, so I'll make sure to heed your advice and think carefully about my coffee choices in the future.
Yeah, I appreciate you coming on the show. This was a super fun chat. It's been over an hour. It feels like we've been going for like 20 minutes. I keep going for even longer than this, but I really appreciate you stopping by. I know I learned a ton. I really hope the audience did as well. And just want to say thank you for coming on. And where is the best
Thank you very much, mate.
Where's the best place for everyone to keep up with your work, your articles, what you're posting? Where should everyone go?
I'd say just go to my recently verified Twitter account @Fitch, and you'll see everything there. That's basically what my website should be, the center of my online presence, but it's really Twitter. That's where my thoughts go, and I share everything. So I'd say just there instead of asking them to follow it like 79 different places, you know. So yeah, @Fitch on Twitter, and thank you for having me on, mate. I appreciate you shooting your shot, and I appreciate the opportunity to chat.
Awesome. Yeah, if you guys want to follow Adam on Twitter, his Twitter is on the screen right now if you're watching via video. If you're listening via audio, I'll put it in the show notes below. And for everyone that tuned in, I appreciate you sticking around all the way to the end. Really hope you enjoyed this. And if you did happen to enjoy it, you found value out of it, would really appreciate you sharing this on your Twitter timeline with a friend, however you want to do that. Just would really appreciate that. And with that, I will see you in the next interview.